let's go to Disney Plus. We're gonna start on the small screen before we get to the big screen. And Moon Knight season one has wrapped up. Oscar Isaac leading this show. Dave, we reviewed the first episode. I think there was some hope that this was going to be a bit of a change up for the Disney Plus Marvel MCU TV shows. Did season one deliver on that promise for you?
Mm. Well, it's definitely different than the previous 4 live action MCU Disney Plus series. That's for sure. And it's not really connected at all to the greater canon, which is nice because that was kind of all that was propping up Hawkeye for even existing, for example. So it's not any of that. It's definitely different. And I respect that creative decision for Marvel. That being said, Moon Knight and the end just didn't come together for me, and I found it just kind of lacking in the. It's just not as compelling as I wanted it to be, which is a big disappointment for a premise featuring Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke about a man possessed by an Egyptian god in the presence of a lot of Egyptian mythology and stuff. Like, oh, on paper sounds pretty fun and at least interesting for an MCU property to tackle, but I just didn't really enjoy the back half of the series, and like they go in a super high concept direction. Kind of takes you by surprise, starting with episode 4. I respect it for trying to do something different, but I just really wasn't as compelled as I wanted to be by this show.
I think it has a lot of the same problems that some of these other Disney Plus MCU shows have, which is they they go for something or they have an idea of what they want to go for and they can execute it to a point, but it seems like in the end everything kind of comes back to being what the MCU and Marvel kind of is, which is, a CGI punch fest a lot of the time. And
Mm.
um while some of that stuff I think worked to some degree, there were just moments where I found myself kind of like eye rolling, right? And you think about the finale and like all these ideas they're trying to like kind of wrap up, and you get this like these two Egyptian gods having this fight at the end, and I feel very uninvested, like not invested in either one of them, to be honest. And it just felt like okay, I want to see how like the Oscar Isaac Ethan Hawke aspect plays out more. I thought the episode 5 where it felt just like an episode of Legion in a lot of ways
Mm. Yeah.
was playing out. I was like, there's something to this where I feel really mind fucked about like what's actually going on and what's not in this sense. And I would have dug a little bit more of this in the season. I understand why they didn't want to just copy Legion and have the same exact concept, but there's something to that, especially with this character who is dealing with dissociative personality disorder, where it's there's a lot more to explore there, and I just feel like they kind of like I don't know pulled their punches at times to just fit into the
Mm.
MCU.
Yeah. And I think there's just a lot of missed opportunities with it too. You know, the man, uh, Mark Spector slash Stephen Grant, possessed by Khonshu, Egyptian god. That should have been a lot more fun. It's not as fun
Yeah,
as like Venom
it's
in the head
not.
of Tom Hardy, you know?
Yeah,
It's just not that fun. It's not that cool. And it should have been. It's kind of
yeah.
lame, you know?
Kanchu as a character just I think didn't really grab me that much. I just
Right.
kind of found him annoying.
Yeah, I guess the best element for me is like how you learn about the origin of Mark Spector and how Stephen Grant uh kind of conjured up this alter ego in the face of domestic trauma as a child.
Yep.
Okay, nice little twist, nice little fake out given how much time we had spent with both personalities without really knowing what's going on. Not too bad. Uh, but I think that it just never truly like grapples well enough with like the Egyptian mythology. Like we have that when we're introduced to all the other gods and like their avatars and stuff. But like, it should be a big moment for the series and for the MCU, and it's just not. Like it just it's not cool. and also it's not consequential. All the other fucking avatars seem to be dead, and I don't really even know what the status is of the other gods. It's kind of unclear too. But I would have rather the show be a lot grander, or at least committed to the weirdness that you said is kind of like Legion, because that would just feel a bit transgressive for the MCU standards. But it can't go that way either because we have to have our CGI fight in the final episode, as you said. So, one observation I saw pointed out, I didn't really make this connection myself, but they kind of haphazardly established that Mark Spector is Jewish, which has comic roots. And I think, honestly, when the Moon Knight character was created in the comics, he wasn't established as Jewish. And then later writers kind of made him Jewish because he had been given a Jewish last name, kind of inadvertently. Regardless, Jewish in the comics, they make him Jewish in the show, but they don't actually grapple with the fact that this follower of the Jewish faith is possessed by the god of a different religion, and he
Yeah.
learns without a shadow of a doubt that these other gods from a different religion are in fact real. There's no
Hmm.
grappling with his faith, and I thought that would, at the very least, be very interesting to see. And there's definitely a lot of meat on that bone. So, kind of an interesting missed opportunity. You would never think Marvel would even present something like that.
That's a good point. I hadn't really thought about that, and I think it just kind of goes to show not only is this, I guess, a 6 episode uh, season of television, a bit limited in terms of the time, but where they choose to kind of use that time to explore things. And I think it would have been really interesting for them to not only have him trying to figure out what these two identities are, and kind of, I don't know, synthesize them together, or come to accept both
Mm,
of them together, but also like how those identities are impacted by that part of his identity, and this realization would have been really fascinating and would have been a huge swing for Marvel. You think about like some of the moments they chose to explore and things that they didn't. I mean, we get so much time in the first like episode where he's like in the museum and like having this like big fight, which I mean, certainly I think for the first episode you have to have something that grabs people and makes people excited for some of the action that's about to come ahead in the season. But I really would have loved to have gotten a little bit more of like Mark and Hawk actually just like talking and like exploring these ideologies. And like obviously like Khonshu has one perspective, and I forget who Ethan Hawke was possessed
uh,
by.
Amit.
Yes. And like I get that, like the idea of like judging people based on future crimes, but is this person really like seeing into the future? Is this God able to see that
Hmm.
and see that these people are
Oh, with the
going to be bad?
scales. Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and like is that going to actually like I think there's a lot to debate there, a little bit more than like the Thanos is crazy. It's like, well, some people think Thanos might have had a point. So maybe there's a way to like explore that like these ideas aren't totally bad, even if they're a bit deranged in some ways based on
Mm,
the way we currently see things. I also think they just never really leaned into what they wanted the show to be. And when they committed to something for an episode, I think it really worked. Like the tomb heist episode, I thought was really really fun, and I was like,
mm.
I wish they had almost just committed to this being like a national treasure type thing almost
Yeah.
in some ways.
Sure.
It could have been a little bit more interesting, but like Marvel things, it's a little bit of everything and
Mm.
never really what you totally want to be.
Right. I mean, also think about it too. We don't actually get a whole lot of Moon Knight as Moon Knight. He's barely in the suit, you know.
Yeah, yeah,
And I think to some people, seeing a
disappointing.
very protracted Moon Knight origin with very little Moon Knight is probably just not appealing, you know. And there's some criticism of the CGI. I didn't really mind it, but
I didn't mind it
you
either.
can notice it a little bit, I guess. May Calamaway as Layla, kind of a light character as well to the very end until she becomes the Scarlet Scarab, which looked pretty cool
Are
and
you
all
an
that.
Egyptian superhero?
Right.
What?
Here's our representation, which
Yeah,
is great and all, but like just kind of ham fisted.
yeah.
Um, yeah, man. At the end of the day, I was like, man, Oscar Isaac and Ethan Hawke, two of our great actors, they're just fucking slumming it, man. Just
Mhm.
not like special material. Just disappointing.
I gotta say, when the season ended and then you have that mid credit scene where
Right.
Hawk is in the mental health facility and gets wheeled out, and they're like, it seemed like they were gonna like be saving him for a season two. I was like, is Ethan Hawke really gonna do a season two of this? Like, is he really gonna commit to this? And then no, you get the reveal that there's another identity, Jake Lockley, who I think a lot of people actually associate most with Moon Knight. So I
Yeah,
think
there were
that
some hints in the series too.
yeah, so I think that sets it up nicely for what the showdown of the second season will be, Jake Lockley
Right.
versus Mark and Steven. But I was glad that I think Hawk kind of closed the door on a second season. I
Right.
think he did a good
Important to
job.
note too, there is no like second year option on Isaac's contract. He is not currently on hold with Marvel at all for a second
Yeah,
season, and there's no second season announced. The other EPs of the series, like Mohammed Diab, they have no idea if they're making a second season or not, despite obviously nods to making another one. So we'll get Moon Knight in some form, I have to imagine, but I think reception and popularity of the series will probably dictate whether that's a season two of the series or perhaps an appearance in some other property, like a movie or another series, whether that's Oscar Isaac again or just Layla, who can say, so seems like there's a lot of TBD with that, or at least they're keeping their cards close to the vest. We got announcement of Loki season two, like the first weekend after the finale came out. So very different circumstance this time around. Um, but at the very least, I do give him credit for making a show that was very
oh
self-contained
yeah,
within the MCU. It is refreshing.
yeah, definitely. And I think they at least were like going for something here. Exploring different aspects of the world and of the MCU world. So give them a lot of credit. Up next in the DC, or sorry, not the DC, in the MCU TV series is Mrs. Marvel. Are you
Yep.
excited?
I think it'll be cool, excuse me, just because the Kamala Khan character is very popular, but because it's a very young character, I hope it's all ages fair and not for kids.
Yeah, I agree. I'm cautiously optimistic, but we'll see. I'm not exactly sure what to expect with it quite yet. So Disney as usually tries to do everything for everyone, so I'm sure that they'll try to rope a little bit in, but it feels like it could be a kids show happening.